Hey guys, it's Jake. I got another review for you today. Today we're going to be talking about the Photon. It's a MVP distance driver. This is my probably number one distance driver that I use, aside from the Mayhem, which you can check out that review. But yeah, this is probably my favorite driver and the one that I pull out in most conditions when I'm trying to get long, controllable distance. So I guess let's start with the numbers. So the Photon is a speed 11, glide 5, turn -1, and a fade 2.5 for some of them. For others, like the Fission, it is a 11, 5, -1.5, 2.5. And I've mentioned this before. I love that MVP uses different numbers for the different plastic types, and it's really important for the Photon, in my opinion, because of all the discs that I've thrown in MVP's lineup, the Photon is the one that is the absolute most drastic change from plastic to plastic, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Obviously, if you don't know the different plastics and how they're going to fly, that can be really confusing when you're trying to buy backups and you pick up something in a different plastic for the first time, and it can be a little bit annoying to be getting different flights out of your discs. But once you kind of know how they fly, it's nice to have the variety where you get the same feel of the disc, but you get very varied flight patterns out of it, which is kind of neat. So I'm going to overlay footage like usual of some field shots and some close-up shots of the discs that I used. And before I do that, a little bit of context. Like I like to, let you know kind of where I'm coming from as far as skills. I do max out around 400 feet for max distance, and consider myself sort of a medium to intermediate arm, I guess, speed. So adjust accordingly depending on your skill level. But yeah, let's get into it. So I guess first let's talk a little bit about the different plastics that I was throwing. So I actually have a few different plastics, most of the plastics actually, that I've thrown. There's the Fission. I've got a couple of Fission discs in different kinds of Fission. We'll talk about that in a minute. I got a couple of cosmic neutrons. I don't have any regular neutrons, but I'm going to assume they're probably pretty similar to the cosmic neutrons. And then I have a plasma, as well as I had, sad, but it's sitting in the bottom of a lake at the Airborne Preserve right now, but I had a proton Earth Day stamped Photon as well. So I've thrown almost all the plastics, and I do think they all fly a little bit different. So I guess let's start with the most overstable. So I've got sort of two different cosmic neutron photons here. The first one is a 174 that I got because I wanted one that was just the beefiest photon I could get my hands on. I wanted one that I'd be able to use for headwinds. So this guy is a great disc. It's super reliable. It immediately wants to fade. You're not going to turn this over. I threw this thing into 20+ mile an hour headwinds, and it held straight the whole time and then just hyzered hard at the end. There was no flipping at all. So this is a really great disc for forehand skip shots, headwinds, all kinds of fun utility stuff. But I don't generally throw this one if I'm looking for distance. The other one that I have is actually a 161, so a very lightweight cosmic neutron. This one, I love the cotton candy colors to it. This guy will actually, it's a lot straighter than the 174 now. It's taken a lot more abuse because I have thrown this one more often, I guess, now, because I pretty much use this one when I just really don't want it to flip. but I do want to try to get distance. So if I just don't trust that I might accidentally turn it over or put a little bit of anhyzer on it, I throw this guy because I know it's going to just go straight and fade out, but I will get a decent amount of distance out of it. So it's still meat hooky. It's still not one that I'm going to turn over, but I can at least use it as a disc that I can use to get some decent distance for long straight to fade shots. So yeah, that's the Cosmic Neutron ones. So if you're looking for a very overstable, meaty distance driver, I highly recommend checking these out in the Cosmic Neutron. It's, as far as I've seen, that they seem to be very, very overstable for every person that I've talked to. So pretty consistent in that way. The next one on the list, I'll actually talk a little bit about the Proton disc that I had. The Proton, I would say, was very close in stability for the most part to these Cosmic Neutron ones, but it did, after it beat in a little bit, it did feel like I could turn it a little bit if I really ripped into it. And I think that one was a 173 or 172, so it was pretty heavy. But yeah, it took a long time to get it beat that way, and I don't know that it was going to turn much more than that. But yeah, it's a hair less stable, I think, than the Cosmic Neutron, at least the one that I had. So after that, we've got the Plasma. The Plasma one, I got this guy in a 158, so it's pretty light. And this thing is still very, very stable. Not as overstable as the Proton or the Cosmic Neutron, and part of that being the weight, I'm sure. But it flies really, really straight. It does have a tiny bit of turn if you really crank on it, but mostly it's just a lot straighter. It feels like it has a little bit less fade at the end. Like it feels almost more like a 2 fade versus the 2.5 or maybe even 3 that I would give the other plastics that we've looked at so far. Beyond that, it's not my favorite. I usually love Plasma in general. I do like this as a cool color shift, like blue to purple. But flight wise, it's not my favorite. It's sort of meh. It's actually just like a very, very long Tesla, I guess, is how it seems to fly. But I already have the Tesla, and it's usually not the flight I'm looking for. So while it's a great disc and it does do that particular shot very well, that's just usually not what I'm looking for with a distance driver. I'm usually looking for a little bit more either a full flight or like the utility that I get from the super overstable ones. So while the Plasma is great, it's just not one that I throw a lot because it's sort of an overlap for me. But yeah, that's the Plasma. Now this last category, I'm going to kind of break into two different categories. There's sort of old fission and new fission. And so we'll talk about the new fission first because I don't know, it was on the top of my pile. But the new fission is a lot stiffer than the older stuff. It feels, it's got some texture to it because it is fission, but it just doesn't have the same gumminess of the older stuff. And it also has a little bit of dome to it, which is kind of nice. You get a lot more glide out of it. But these guys do turn over. They get super awesome long S flights out of these things. If I crank on one of these, I know it's going to turn over. It's going to be a late turn, kind of like a relay, and it's going to turn a bit, but it's always going to come back. It's definitely not going to roll on me or anything. But these things get massive distance. They're really the disc where I can fire these things on a flat release and get the full flight right to left max distance lines. So this particular one is an Elaine King 6X World Champ. I'm pretty sure all the newer 6X ones are this sort of fission. But yeah, the key thing, and this is a 166, is that these things really glide. They have a nice turn, nice fade, just a super long flying disc. It did not take long to start seeing turn on these guys. I didn't have to beat them up very much. So this is my favorite distance disc for things that I can consistently trust The Mayhem may go a little bit further, but I also don't always know exactly how much it's going to turn. So this is just really nice to have if I know I want to get distance, but I have maybe a little bit more narrow fairway or some more hazards along the sides that I really don't want to bring into play. I know I can trust these guys. The other option in Fission are the older Fission plastics. So I have a Basket Basher's Pectoceratops. I don't think I have any video of this one currently. And then an Elaine King 5X, which you can see is just super flexible. Very, very gummy, very, very strange. I've never felt a plastic this sort of rubbery. But these things feel so good. I wish they all felt like this in Fission. I don't know that the flight difference is as noticeable, but the feel is just amazing. Like you get the best grip on these discs, and these things bomb as well. They fly just like the 6X, the firmer Fission, the newer Fission, in my opinion. But they just feel so much nicer. These remind me like the things that I liked about the newer Glow reactor, the feel of that. I had sort of that same feel. This is even like 10 times better than that. It's just that much gummier, and you don't feel the texture quite as much, but it's just so comfortable in the hand. So I always feel like I get great releases with these. They just are super nice. And this is a 165 and a 167. So they're, sort of middle of the Fission range, I guess, or maybe the upper side of the Fission range. But yeah, so those are the different plastics that I've been throwing. I kind of mentioned this already, that the shots that I'm going for with these are maximum distance, so usually a flat release where I have enough room to, get the little bit of turn to fade the full flight, but also keeping it within, maybe a little bit more narrow fairway than I would be working with a Mayhem or something. Or if there's some kind of headwind at all, I know that these things are still going to be able to handle that, whereas a Mayhem, I don't know. It might turn and burn on me. It might go nowhere and just hyzer out. It's a lot harder to predict. So these guys are my consistent. I can trust these guys to get me the distance, even if they're going to come up a little shorter than a perfect Mayhem. So yeah, I have a lot of these. I bag a couple at a time normally, and much like the Tesla, they're just my go-to disc for that particular range. Yeah, I don't really have any other big thoughts about this. I think the numbers are fairly accurate. Well, I guess except for the cosmic neutron. The whole -1 turn on a cosmic neutron, I have never seen a cosmic neutron turnover at all. So the photon, I think it gets the -1 turn into like a headwind. And then I would say it can get there with the plasma one, I think, if I beat it in enough. And then the 1.5 turn on the Fission ones is for sure accurate. And then the fade is probably pretty accurate across the board, except for, again, the cosmic neutron. I'd maybe move that up to like a 3 instead of a 2.5. So, yeah, it's an interesting range of discs, considering it's a single disc. So you can buy a few different flights by just picking up different variations of the plastic for the photon. But yeah, if you're looking to try something out new for that long distance, maybe pick up a photon, give it a whirl. If you have any other questions about the photons, let me know. If you want to see other footage or see me using it in different ways, be sure to drop a comment. Otherwise, subscribe. I'm going to have some more reviews, including some non-disc reviews coming out in the near future. So be sure to make sure you don't miss those. And otherwise, we'll catch you in the next one.